Perfect. Awesome. So everybody, you're most welcome to our first Rend online coaches clinic. We're very glad that we have you guys here with us. Just a quick few housekeeping notes. If you have any questions or you want to get a message across to us, please feel free to type it in. Please include your Twitter username when you type in a question, just so that when we're coming to the end of our time and we haven't answered your question, we'll be able to tweet it out to you later. Let's get it started here with Coach Troy Culley over in the UK. Coach Culley is the GB under-16 men's head coach and is the academy coach with Myerscough College Basketball Academy. So, Coach, take it away for us.
Okay. Put that there. Right. So first off, thank you for having me. It's great that I guess maybe 8 years after we first met, I can give back in a capacity which hopefully is beneficial for the listeners, and hopefully, regardless of the level that people work at, they can take something away. A lot of the practical examples when we get into this are from my day-to-day work at Myerscough. So I'm aware that, if there's club coaches listening, you might be limited and constrained in terms of contact time with your teams and things like that. But just try and understand the meaning behind some of the things we're going to speak about. And just as like a rule of thumb, everything we go through throughout the next half an hour, just try and apply it to your own context and ask yourself, how does this look in my environment? And yeah, we'll just dive in. So the first thing I want to touch upon is, for quality learning, the brain needs to be engaged. So it needs to be engaged with the material, how we process it, how we twist it, and to fully comprehend it in a sense. Now, the issue you have, I think some of the more traditional methods we've looked at, by making it obvious and simple for the athlete. Yes, there is a great return in that, and there's usually quick results. But in the long term, that's not going to yield the results in terms of retention and transfer and their ability to replicate what they've learned. And the biggest thing that comes through that is just, when you put effort into something and there's a level of difficulty, it establishes a better memory for the athlete. So again, block practice, traditional, is it a problem? I'm going to go against the grain and say it isn't. Okay, it's not, there isn't a one size fits all. It's not one method fits all. And again, kind of the key to remember is when we get into it is just, what is your situation? Because in certain situations, you're going to need certain things. So just be mindful of that. The consequence, okay, so the best way to improve retention and transfer is just spreading out and mixing up the sessions. Okay, so it's not just doing prescribed 15 minutes of shooting followed by 15 minutes of passing, and then we might get to a 5-on-5 game at the end. So it's just, how do you mix it up? How do you spread concepts out throughout the practice? And it's just kind of this, it's a nice little model here. It's just this retrieve, tweak, store cycle is, once you've learned something, once you've worked on something, your ability to retrieve it, tweak it again for a different situation, store it next time. Next practice, we go back into what's previously learned, tweak it again, store it, and over time, again, improves, our ability to retrieve that information, but also our capacity of knowing when to use it and why. Again, so just some, very quick, just looking at some coaching practice methodology that's out there. So if you want rapid learning, then yes, okay, there's going to be block practice, there's going to be mass practice. If you want better learning and retention, then it's going to be more randomized, it's going to be more distributed. With that, okay, with block practice, mass practice, yes, there is, lots of knowledge of results. So there's quick feedback, there's a lot of feedback because you're repping something out continuous. But the problem you have with that is something called knowledge of results crutch, which means the athlete then becomes more reliant on the coach. So they're not really reflecting on, what it is they need to improve on. It comes more down to, they're waiting for you to give them the answer all the time. And that's not what we want. We're trying to lead them down a path of, developing independent thinkers. So whilst there is, less knowledge of results with, random distributed practice, which we'll get into, over time, it increased their bandwidth, so to speak, and their ability to recall when to use it, why to use it. The next part of that then just kind of links more towards demonstrations. So, I mean, I was part of I guess, an era where when I was growing up, it was very much the coach demonstrated every single skill, and it was you need to then go away and replicate this. And that could be individual shooting, that could be individual passing, paired passing, whatever it was always an essence of the coach demonstrates it, and then you have to go and do it like that. Now, some of the natural problems with that is, if you're a coach who isn't very good and doesn't have a massive playing background, your ability to execute some of those skills might not be exactly how you want, but that might be how they're perceived. And if players are copying that, that's what they're going to try and replicate. But again, in a short window, if you need quick results, then you might show that method. But again, what we're leaning towards and the whole purpose of this talk is, it could be like this, but it could also be like that. So you might, different people might demonstrate in different ways, but it's getting a player to understand that, there's no necessarily correct way of doing things. And as you go through it, naturally you're going to adapt your skill to the environment you're in. And you could look at numerous different examples. Like, nobody shoots the ball the same. Yes, we have the same concept, but if you look, if you pick 10 different people, everybody's shot would look somewhat different. And again, it comes back to that idea of, self-coping and figuring stuff out, them improving their bandwidth. So again, what does your situation need now? That's just a question, you can ask yourselves. If you need fast results, then yes, it'll be more block practice, it'll be more mass practice, because we want quick results. The learner is able to get into a groove very quickly, you're able to give quick feedback. So in essence, there's very quick learning. Now, an example where this might be relevant is, if you're a national team camp and you've got a very short window. I was in a situation last summer where I coached an England under-18 team in a preparation tournament, like a summer tournament. And we got together on the Wednesday, practiced twice Wednesday, practiced twice Thursday, and then played 5 games over the weekend. So a lot of what we did was very much, a lot of replicating the same thing, a lot of high repetitions of the same thing, just to get them in a situation where they had a couple of things that they could go and do as a unit to be competitive in the games. But what I'd like to allude to, and I think when I spoke to Nabil, a lot of coaches that might be tuning into this are club coaches. So if you are a club coach, you're an academy coach in your environment, then the end goal is, where is this player going to be in 5 years from now or 10 years from now? I think a lot of it is, how many of our players might, progress on to play national team or play senior basketball in the future. So again, it's always looking at it saying the young performer is a long-term project. But ultimately, as a coach, you've got choices to make in regards to that. So yes, there are different learning options. But again, it's more, what are you going to do? So for example, if you're an under-14s coach, it's about striking a balance maybe in terms of, you might want fast results early, to engage them, increase enjoyment levels, etc. But over the course of time, in terms of them progressing from, U14 to U16 and all the way up to U18, you might, work on more random and distributed methods just so that their retention and transfer improves and they're able to recall that information later on down the line. So with that, again, it's just understanding, do you know why you do what you do? I mean, that was a question posed to me on one of my coaching courses. I had a practical observation, and the tutor at the time asked me, we were doing a 3v2 continuous drill, and he tapped me on the shoulder and was like, why are you doing this? And at the time I didn't know. It was just one of those, well, I do it because I did it as a player, I've seen other teams do it, it's just a common practice, it's a common drill. I think what really stuck home with me then was just understanding that the why behind we do stuff and the content and the context you put it in, for me, really outweighs the what. So it's understanding, this is why we're doing it, this is how it's going to help you, this is a situation you might use it in a game. That's more important than we're doing this drill followed by this drill followed by this drill. So again, just a guideline is just understanding, when if you are looking at coaches, you are looking at coaches for mentors, or you're looking at people to learn off. It's just understanding, have they got a clear understanding of what they're doing and why, and what methodology they're following. So again, now just on to the main part of the talk today. So just in essence, all we're doing with constraint-led practice, linking back to the random and distributed stuff from before, is just taking a part of the game, breaking it down, creating a scenario where we work on that, and then putting it back into the game after. So it's just a way of manipulating some things in the environment to generate the behaviors that we want. So again, these are the 4 main areas. So like I say, we're trying to change the behaviors of the players, and that could be anything, offensively, defensively, how they act in certain scenarios. But we're creating an environment where it's very specific. We're targeting set things, and the players are then going to have to find solutions for that. So again, to help their ability to retain information, replicate it again and again, they have to be the ones that figure stuff out. And the most important thing is just it's finding creative ways where it's fun, it's competitive. So moving on to here, the 3 main areas that we're going to target are the individual themselves, so the athletes that you work with on a day-to-day basis, the environment that you're creating, and the environment that they're in day-to-day, and then the task itself. So what are you doing in your practices from a drill standpoint day-to-day? So here, like I say, on-court actions fall under task constraints. For the environment, conditions, surfaces, teammates, other individuals, other stakeholders, external distractions. So that might be, in some environments with teams, it might be crowd, things like that. And then the individual. So characteristics of that individual: thoughts, worry, anxiety, internal distractions, emotions, physical fatigue, arousal, and then just size. That could be height, whatever it is. So some of the things to think about in that is how can you manipulate some of these things within your practices to maybe work towards a goal that you have. But the main part that we're going to look at here, and just kind of lean on some of the experiences I've had over the past decade, is just what can we do within practice day to day, and understanding that this is the main aim that we're trying to work towards, is that we should be allowing the athlete an opportunity to via us manipulating constraints, develop their skill through a variety of different practices. So here's something that I managed to take from Brian McCormick in a book that I picked up maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's something that I keep on me in my bag. I reference quite a lot, and it's just a variety of different ways in which you can manipulate task-related constraints, but understand that every decision you make as a coach, and it's the same thing you would stress with players, is that every decision has a consequence, every decision has an outcome, and what does that look like? So for example here, if you want to manipulate time and you say it was a 10-second shot clock, you're going to emphasize quicker play. That might be if you're doing a full court drill and you come over the halfway line and you have a 5 or 6 second shot clock as soon as the ball comes over the half. It might be that your emphasis now shifts more towards early offense and making a quick decision. But again, it's just, these are some examples. As you go away from here, it's just maybe reflect on these 6 things and just think of different ways in which you can manipulate some things. But as always, whenever you do something, there's always going to be a consequence to that. For example, you move a dribble, that in turn might improve passing, ball movement, screening. If you reduce the space that players work in, you're going to increase stress levels because you have to make quicker decisions. So again, it's just something to be mindful of. And this is where I think one of the things that I've took from this over the last couple of years is when everyone moves towards this athlete-centered approach. I think that's definitely happened more so lately than maybe when I was first getting into coaching. Like it's not a scenario where you set up a small-sided game and you then step away from that small-sided game and that's it. So you got to be quite mindful in terms of what are you doing, why are you doing it, and it goes back to the point before about do we as coaches understand why we're doing what we're doing, because it can't come from a place of I did this as a player, or this was done, I saw somebody else do this drill at a clinic, therefore I'm going to use it myself. Because again, especially in this current climate where this is one example of a webinar, but there's hundreds of webinars available at the moment. I think one thing we can always just take is just understanding, what is our context, Different leagues play with different rules. Different games require different things. So just be mindful of that when we're selecting stuff, is what's appropriate for the group you work with, whether that's under 14, under 16, under 18, or senior levels, is what's appropriate for the group in front of you. And again, the aim of this is, we want players to be adaptable, especially at the youth level. Is you want players, under 14s to be adaptable, to move to under 16, to move to under 18s. When they leave under 18s, or if they leave under 16s and they go away from your program, we're sending adaptable players out into the world. Okay, so just as we go into this now, again, start with the end in mind. So what is it you want to achieve, and then what is the activity for you to bring about that outcome? So it can't be the other way around, where we have a practice plan and we just dump drills on a page and off we go. It's, what is it I need to work on? What is it the players need to work on? And how do we bring that to life? One thing that that stuck with me was reflection. Needs to lead to implementation. So whenever there's games, and we'll get to that in a little bit later, but whenever there's a game or an opportunity where you can test the players' skills and highlight what they need to work on, how are we then using that and bringing that to life next practice? So just some considerations. Don't be too eager to help the players. Give them enough time to figure things out. So just be mindful of time on task. I learned this lesson the hard way. I worked with a Spanish coach when I was in Kent a few years ago, and I was coaching under 14s at the time, and he had 2 stopwatches. The situation was, he come up to me at the start and was like, I'm going to start both these stopwatches at the same time, and I'm going to catch up at the end of practice. Okay, we go in, I deliver practice finishes, and the situation we have is the stopwatch in his left hand started and stopped, as practice started and finished. The one in his right hand would start and stop every time I spoke. And the harsh reality at the end of that practice was I spoke for 30-35 minutes of that practice. And the lesson I learned was that if I did that in both practices that we had that week, out of the 3-hour contact time we had, I'd lose an hour. So it was just understanding and being mindful that we don't need to give lectures. We don't need to showcase these players all the information that we know. It needs to be, what can we do to break it down and give them a soundbite or a buzzword that kind of resonates with them and gets them back on track. Let the players play through mistakes. That links back to them being adaptable. So if they're learning and they're figuring things out, then you're there to help mentor that, help facilitate that. The younger players you have, the longer it may take. Just be patient. And this is also, you've got to be mindful of the fact that we don't have especially in the UK, a decorated culture of basketball. So players aren't coming into the game at 7, 8 years old. In some cases, we're seeing players even at the national team level that are coming in at 15, and they're very raw. So it's just understanding that things will take time. But going back to the point I mentioned earlier on, it's how many of these players are still going to be playing in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and at what level are they playing at, and what have we done to kind of build a good foundation. Mindful, it must look and feel like basketball. So that's just context. I've seen a lot of really interesting drills and really interesting concepts over time. But for me, it's you just to strip it back and say, what does the game look like? What are they going to see in the game? What does that skill look like? And then how do we bring that to life? And again, that's just better for long-term learning, especially again in youth environments where results shouldn't really matter at under 14s, under 16s. I think the reason I'm coming at it from that angle is if we are, development coaches working at this level, then it's about developing these players to play, at a level or long into the future. Again, your players must be the focus. So it's what do they need rather than what do we think they need. So it's just have that conversation. Again, just when we go into these constraints, don't be too tight on them. Understand that there has to be room to progress it and regress it, and use games to test it. So a good model for that is when we teach something, we test it, we find out how it is under pressure, we can then tweak it and we can repeat that. So we're just going to move into now just some examples of some stuff I've done at Myerscough and how you can build it up. So the concept here is just finishing. So the first drill here is you'll start on the elbow, you've got a ball, defenders on your hip, and they can either have a bar arm on your hip or they can have high hands, and they're just going to go chest to chest and ride you out. And you're just going to drive, and they're going to try and stop you turning the corner, ride you all the way to the rim, and you've got to kind of finish with an outstretched hand. So this is the first scenario that a lot of players find themselves in from a 1v1 situation where they've ripped through. They haven't fully beaten the defender, but the defender still stays on their hip. So it's not a wide open layup. It's just getting used to finishing with some contact. The next situation which we'll see is you've beaten your defender. The help defenders coming across either from they might be coming low, or it might be in transition where they're coming at an angle. And how do they cut you off? So once they've cut you off, what's your response to that? So it might be, in this example here, we can pro hop into the lane. You might have a Euro step here, but it's understanding that you have the driving lane, they took that away. What's your response? Another example of a finishing move is, or a situation which you're going to have to finish is that, defense is trailing the play. So in this example here, the defender's facing away from the offensive player. We rip through and go, they react live to the dribble. And it's just understanding, finishing in opposite side of the rim, finishing near side of the rim, and what's your different solutions for that. Finishing over. So again, it goes back to you've beaten your defender, the help rotates. We now can't make a pro hop into the middle or a Euro step in the middle to change direction because the second defender's dropped down. So how do we finish over the defender? And then this is a really common one in games is, we have drive and kick. And on the closeout from the drive and kick, it's how do you then finish against a second defender? So it might be, you rip through middle, get to the block, and you've got a left-hand floater, left-hand runner, but it's another situation that players will see in the game. So all these 5 situations are situations that we've seen when we've watched back film, and that's where we need to, for us, that's the starting point, is this is what we need to work on. How do we build that up? So in a 2v2, again, a lot of these drills, you probably would have seen countless times. So a 2v2 drill, just pass around, close out opposite. We end up in this situation. So you could do it in the slot, or you could do it on the 45 extended. And then how you can manipulate those constraints to work on finishing might be when X2 closes out, they might have to touch the 3-point line to give the advantage to the offensive player. And then again, once the offensive player goes on a straight line drive, the defender who's X1 might, slide in front. Okay, can we go around them once we're cut off? If we can't, can we go over them? How we then build that. So again, we've done 1v1 finishing in the half court, then we've done 2v2 in the half court. The next progression might be something like this, where we go 2v1 in the full court. And then when the ball crosses over the halfway line, the defender would sprint in, touch the center circle, and get back to make it into 2v2. Now with this, our emphasis is on finishing. So as a coach on the sideline, that's the main thing that we should be critiquing. But also, with drills like this, and that's one of the things I encourage everybody when you're planning drills is, we need to be working on offense and defense pretty much every situation we can, especially if you're limited on practice time. You can manipulate things here like I did before with the shot clock. When the ball comes over the half, you've got set time to get to the rim and make a decision. We then go back into the half court, add the extra guy in and go 3v3. So we end up in this situation. Now, again, you can start this. The principle for us is we're still working on finishing. But again, there's different things you can do out of this situation. So you can work on ball screen coverage. You can work on pass and cut. You can work on actions off the ball. And again, it's just how you manipulate those constraints. So it might be you have to perform X before it's live. Once we've done that in the half court, we then take it back to the full court. And this is a drill which would feature in at least one of our practices every week, either as a 3v3 or a 4v4 drill. If it's a 4v4 drill, you'd have the extra guy on the baseline. And it's very simple. It's 3v3 full court. Defense, stop or score. You would then outlet to a new 3. The new 3 would transition the other way. The team that was just on offense would then play defense. So, the idea with that, again, it's, yes, we're targeting one thing which might be finishing, and we've built it up. So how does it look in different situations, starting from a very isolated situation of 1v1, looking at 2v2, and then building up to 3v3. And you can do that of anything. It's more, what is your emphasis? What are you coaching? This is something that whilst I was preparing this for this talk, I picked up from a blog by Jack Fleming, I think it was. So you don't have to start with, a 1v1 drill. Some of the things you could do is you could play straight away. I'm very fortunate. Again, it depends on, how much you reflect, or, do you analyze games back? Do you watch games back? But when you reflect on what your team needs, then you're in a situation where I might be able to come in on a Monday and the first thing we do is, the big issue that was in the game at the weekend. If you're not in that situation, something like this is a really cool idea in terms of, the first thing you do is you play. So you play straight away, and then you see what the gap is, and then, in the half court and the full court, and you write those things down. And then that gap, whatever you've identified, that then forms a practice. And again, you can manipulate that into a 1v1 scenario, a 2v2 scenario, a 3v3 scenario. And then once you kind of address that skill, you can then take it back to the full court and work on the game again, and then kind of relay that in terms of where were you at the start of the practice. Here's some of the things we've worked on. This is what it now looks like again in the full court. And, with your success criteria, again, you can choose how competitive you make that, but you can always go back and say, right, well, if you can score it 1 to 10, or you might engage with questioning and break them off into small groups. Just moving through. Okay, I know it's half an hour as a whistle stop tour into this, but again, I just want you just to paint the picture. 2 key things that I took from my time on the FIBA Europe coaching certificate, which I think underpins a lot of the work that I do at the development level, is you can't be rich in tactics if you're poor in technique. I think one of the things I've seen at a magnitude of levels is a team might run something from a tactical standpoint. It's not working for whatever reason, so they run another tactical thing, and they run something else. We're going to run a horn set, that doesn't work, we're going to go 4 low. That doesn't work, we're going to go over diamond. And it's like, well, if you go back to that original point, what's the problem? Is the problem that your kids can't get open and get a catch, and that's what's halting everything? Is it that your point guard can't get over the half because he's under heavy ball pressure? So it's just understanding that at this level, especially the youth level, skill development is one of the most important things. And underneath that, it's by focusing on that skill development, so the individual technique of finishing, if we use that as an example, it's then a tactic of when to apply that, and that will contribute to a team's success. So for example, it's understanding, if a defender's on my hip, we're going to do this. If they've cut me off, I can then do this. And I think that's one thing you can go away from here and reflect on, is just this, the skills that you're teaching. Where does it apply? Why does it apply? And then it's easier for the players to understand when to use it. Just a couple other things before we wrap it up and we jump to some of the questions. These are just some whistle stop bullet points of things that I've picked up off this course and just through some experiences here at Myerscough. What drills do you do that put kids at a disadvantage? Do you practice adversity and you welcome the thought that a lot of things could be against you? Predictable practice usually leads to predictable results. The story I have on that is how many times do you spend working against a press in practice, or working dealing with pressure in practice, compared to if you do 5 minutes every practice over the course of the season, that might add up to a lot, compared to maybe doing a 10-minute section in one practice before you play one team. Just be mindful of that. Practice how you want to play. My philosophy is very, very much space the floor. We play with incredible pace, so our practice has to replicate that. Understand that, again, coaches, you should be practicing your craft in the off season, just like the players do, which we're doing right now due to the situation we're in. But it's the value of context and understanding, yes, something may look good in the NBA or something may look good in the EuroLeague, but that's not necessarily relevant for an under 14, under 16, or even an under 18 coach, depending on the level they're at. Understand that if you go back to when kids were younger, or coaches were younger, are on this call, go back to street games and understand that, there's, in a sense, there's more freedom back then. Kids will experiment. It's fun. It's creative, and they'll self-organize without us as adults, without interference. So sometimes it's okay to take a step back, pose a problem, and see how kids respond to it, see how they figure it out. Players always find a way to adapt the technique to the game. And again, it's about us as coaches, facilitating an environment, facilitating their development rather than dominating it. And I think this is a big misconception that I may have faced over the years, is that when you allow that to happen and you're not dictating everything that happens every practice, there's a fear that you're not in control. There might be a perception from your peers in your college that you're not coaching, you're not doing your job. But again, it comes back to the first slide we have, which is why I try to paint the picture, is it needs to be messy. Learning is messy, the game is messy. So for them to develop those skills, you need to be putting them in situations to do that. And again, just a last couple of points is, coaching is too sanitized at times. Okay, you need to find a way to make it a little bit more hostile. So how are you challenging the players physically? How are you challenging them psychologically? Because ultimately, if you're not doing that in practice to a level that you can, when they're going to get into a game, they're not going to be ready for that. So just be, how are you manipulating the constraints to get a response that you want? And then the last thing is just, nail down your purpose. So going back to one of the previous slides, why do you do what you do? So understanding from a coaching standpoint, why do you coach? Why are you at a development level? Why do you enjoy working at that level? And again, everyone has different motives and reasons, but if you understand why you do what you do, it's, for me, it's helped me a lot. Now I've got it down on paper to be able to dive into certain things, and I understand why I'm picking certain things, why I'm picking certain constraints. So a couple of whistle stop points. The time's flown by. If anybody has any questions, Nabil will open it up in a second, but if there's anything that you need, you want to have a conversation with or whatever, feel free to, to get in touch, and I'm more than happy to jump on the phone with anyone. So, Nabil, over to you.
Excellent, Coach. Really, really appreciate you taking the time. Coach, can I just, I guess, maybe open up with the first question? But before I do, guys, if anybody has any questions, can you please include your Twitter name when you send that question over to us? That way we can also tweet it back out to you, especially if we don't get a chance to answer it here. Coach Culley, just one of the things you said is, try and include, help prepare your players to face adversity in practice. How do you guys at Myerscough do that? How do you guys train adversity?
So, we try and make everything competitive. There needs to be, for the most part, a winner and a loser to every drill. And I think there's a big difference between a kid losing a 1v1 drill or maybe doing a down and back or 5 push-ups compared to maybe just putting the kids on the line and running for the sake of running. So I don't advocate that, but I do think we need to teach kids how to win. I think that's an important skill. It's something that we have to do a lot with the kids here at the academy. Like, you don't turn up and all of a sudden you're ready to win. So it's, what does that look like? What effort do you have to put into it day to day in practice? So again, try and make it competitive. Try and have a winner and a loser, whether it's shooting drills, whether it's 1v1, 2v2, whatever it is. It's just try and make it as competitive as possible. If it's not competitive in terms of me versus you, it's go against the clock. Can you complete X amount of X in this time? So again, it's just finding ways to put them under some pressure that isn't just, here, go and do this, go out at your own leisurely pace, and you can kind of go through it. You don't want to see anybody just going through the motions.
Okay. Just another question, just to follow it up. You guys competed, you guys had a great season, both domestically as well as in Europe this year with Myerscough. Just in terms of preparing for the European teams that you guys played against, obviously a different environment, a different style of play. What were some of the things that you guys did consistently from the start of the season to prepare you guys to go into that?
So yeah, I think it's understanding, taking straight from that last point, it's, you have to be ready to compete every single possession, because you've now gone into an environment where the competition level is higher. you're punished a lot more. So it's understanding that, you know, everybody at that level is able to knock down a shot. Everybody at that level, even if they're not a great 1v1 player, can still create and distribute to somebody else. So it's really, you know, nailing down the details, keeping things, you know, super simple in terms of what we want to achieve, and holding the players accountable to that. So again, we had to refine things. We had to adjust how we played. A lot of it then changed to, instead of running set plays, which a lot of European teams are used to adjusting to and are used to defending, it was more about what advantages do we have, you know. So we have some really good 1v1 players that can create breakdown. So how are we stripping it back and putting them into a situation where we can create that breakdown? But I think the biggest thing is just understanding that you have to play to the end. I think in England, you know, you can put a press on, or you can be up 15, 20 points on a team, and teams will quit, and that 20 points can become 30, 40, 50 very quickly. Out there, you know, you can be up 6, a team can be up 6, and that could be the game done because they can manage that lead. Or a team could be down 15, but they're not going to stop, and they've got the players that are capable of bringing them right back into the game. So it's really understanding, you know, value in the possession, looking after the ball, really, you know, really stressing, you know, the jobs that you have to do.
Awesome. Really appreciate that, Coach. If anybody has any questions, fire them away. Whilst we wait, if there's any questions, whilst we wait, Coach, can you share your, if some of the guys want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So you can jump on Twitter, which is just at Coach Culley. You can hit me up through that, or if you prefer to just, you know, email directly, it's just Troy Culley at live.co.uk. So either means I'm happy to. Like I say, I'm happy to dive into some things, you know, more. I'm happy to have conversations. You know, I think we get a lot from doing that. And I think it's one thing that I've come to appreciate, especially in this time. And it's something that I definitely didn't do when I was younger enough of, is just listen to people, you know, understand that, okay, I might do it this way, you might do it that way. Okay, I might take something from you. How does that look in my environment? Could I tweak it? Could I change it? If not, not a problem, and move on. So I think, you know, having conversations is healthy because it just means we always get to challenge, you know, why we do what we do.
Awesome. So we've got a question here coming up. How do you build confidence in players when a team is not winning games or they're getting blown out in games? How would you build confidence with those teams?
Okay. So again, it's looking at, you know, what level are you at? It's looking at, you know, what are some of the, you know, the targets that you may have set for the team. So in my eyes, you know, everybody should have a set of performance criteria in terms of offense and defense, as things that as a group you've defined that if you're doing these things, then you're moving in the right direction. The misconception we have is that, unfortunately, in the nature of what we do, you know, winning matters, and a lot of the time, you know, you're judged on that. But to strip it back, like I've been in situations where I've had losing seasons. I've had seasons where we've took some really heavy losses, but it's looking at saying, right, well, what do we need to do? This was at the under 14 level. What do we need to do to prepare you to play under 16 basketball? And it's just reminding them that, okay, you know, yes, there's some losses right now and it may be tough, but this is a situation which we can grow from, and just keeping things in perspective, you know. So it's, you know, how, you know, are you doing things, you know, well, and you're just not, you know, you're just not knocking down shots. Are you, you know, coming back to that performance criteria stuff, it's just, if you're able to say to the players, you know, we say we're going to do this, this, and this, but they just beat us on sheer physicality, that's not a problem, you know, because we know that we're doing the right thing in terms of preparing these kids to move up to under 16s and so forth. But again, it's a constant battle. But it gets to, what are you doing in practice? You can, you know, have shooting competitions, you know, you can have, there's a variety of different ways you can frame it. But again, I think it's just reiterating the message that it's not about, you know, you winning on Saturday, sorry, if you're an under 12, under 13 kid. It's about, you know, this is the long-term thing of, you know, developing good habits, developing good behaviors. So again, I think it comes back to the first point is just, what do you value as a coach? What is the team value? What do you feel your group needs to do for success? And if you're still not able to hit those things, it's just, you know, look at a game, instead of looking at it as a 40-minute game, you might look at it as 4 10-minute games. You know, so what can we do in this 10 minutes to win this game? If you need to break it down further, it's can we win 5 minutes? And then you might come away from a game, okay, let's say you lose by 20 to the team the first time round, or 30. Second time you play them, you might have won, 5 or 3 or 4 of those 5-minute battles. So again, it's just how you frame it with the kids. And again, there's different ways you can do that.
Perfect, appreciate it. Next question we've got for you. You mentioned playing with pace. So what are some of your favorite constraint-led drills or methods to teach your players an understanding of pace and poise?
Okay, so the 2 drills that you saw earlier on, 2v1+1, 3v3 conversion. We've added an extra guy in to do 4v4 conversion. We've done a 4 versus 2 drill, which is very similar to a 2v1+1, but it's 4 versus 2 and then 2 other guys coming in. So it's just a lot of the stuff we do, because we value playing at pace and playing up tempo. A lot of the drills we do in practice are in the full court. So our shooting drills are in the full court. Our breakdown drills are in the full court. Now there's some concepts we might break down into the half court if we really have to teach it. But for the most part, it's just getting players used to playing at speed and making decisions at speed. Other ways in which you can constrain it is, you might be doing a 4v4 drill in the full court and have 3 balls on the sideline. Every time there's a turnover, you replace the ball. So you say, like, in this 5-minute drill or this 10-minute drill, you're allowed 3 turnovers. And if they break that in the first 3 or 4 possessions, you might bring them in and say, right, let's review that. Why are we in this situation? Again, it's empowering the guards to understand, yes, we want to play quick, but if we don't have a numerical advantage early on, it's empowering them to pull it back out, recognize that, and then flow into something else. So again, it's just, manipulating shot clocks, manipulating time. But again, it's a lot of the stuff we do is just in the full court. Can you do one of the full court drills and it's no dribble in the backcourt or no dribble at all. So it's just, guards got to recognize, I've got to go and get the outlet. I'm communicating with my teammate. He's going to, instead of us both waiting to get the outlet, I'm going to come and get it and go. The other guy's already breaking down. So as soon as I receive the outlet, I can pass ahead to him. And in 1.5 seconds, the ball's already at the other 45. So again, it just comes back to how do you want to play? What does that look like? And then can you replicate that as much as possible in practice? Because I don't feel like you can spend a lot of time in the half court in practice and then expect your guys at the weekend to then play 40 minutes up and down. So again, it has to replicate it as much as possible, and it has to look and feel like the game, especially the game that you want to play.
Appreciate that. Can I just add to Coach's answer there? One of the things that we did this season was a kind of 3-possession game where we went offense, defense, offense before setting it up again. So in the half court, we would run a set, whatever set we want, if we're working on a baseline play or a half court set. And then once the shot went up, whether it's a rebound or a made basket, our players had 4 seconds to get the ball over the halfway line. Now, once we get the ball over the halfway line, if we had an open layup, we would go ahead and encourage them to take it. Otherwise, we would encourage them to flow into our offense. So we're not calling a set play coming back down. We're trying to flow back into our offense and get the movement we want. Early on in the season, a lot of disruption, a lot of poor shot selection, turnovers, and then it's using that time to allow the players to self-discover. Maybe we could slow it down here, maybe we could pass the ball and cut through. And just by being patient with it, at the end of the season, we kind of found that there was a little bit more flow. So just answering that. Next question we have for you is, do you think making every drill have a winner and a loser creates a winning mentality, or is there more to it than just that?
I think there's more to it. There is just more to that. I mean, like I say, there's times where we've had a heavy weekend and we haven't been as competitive, in terms of, like, not every drill has a winner or loser. There's been times where it's just, you just let them figure it out. But it's not just the on-court stuff. It's them understanding, about everything, so it's what are you doing, because especially with the club level, which I think a lot of the coaches on this call are, is you're only going to see them for a snapshot in that week, so it's understanding that, okay, I may see them for an hour and a half on a Tuesday and an hour and a half on a Thursday, but what are you doing outside of that? And okay, it's the concept's no different to here at the academy. Okay, we have more practice time with them, but it's what are they doing outside of that practice time? Is it just they want to turn up to practice and now they want to be a winner, or is it they approach it in terms of, I'm a winner in school. I'm a winner when I go to the gym and do extra stuff. When I come in and shoot by myself or with a teammate, I'm applying it to that as well. So for us, it's about our habits and understanding this is what the habits look like. We're very fortunate that, when kids come in at 16 years old, we've got 18, 19-year-old guys that have been with us for a year or 2 years that have been through the system and have some really good habits that they can lean on. So it's stuff like, understanding, are we turning up to practice, as it starts, or we turn up beforehand to get ready? So it's not just a matter of, we play a 3v3 drill, this team has a winner, this team has a loser, we become a winning team. It's the conversations you have with those players after you've lost. It's the conversations you have with those players after you've won. It's the conversations you've had with a player who, he may have just been on the losing team for 4 or 5 times in a row in practice, and now he's visibly frustrated. So it's that conversation. So it's a variety of things. It's not just the drills, it's the relationships you're building with your players. Again, at the club level, that's tough because you don't get a lot of time with them. So maybe it's, if a player looks visibly frustrated after a practice, is you just catch up with them before they go home. Just maybe ask, can I have 5 minutes just to, reassure them. But it's a whole combination of things. Like, it's not just win this drill and that's it. It's, are you looking back at film? If you do, if you do video yourselves, are you watching back film? Not necessarily for your highlights, but here's 3 possessions where I didn't rotate properly. That needs to be better. Okay, what can I do? So it's a whole variety of things. And it's just, for me, it's a mindset more than anything. And it's how you build that. So yeah.
Awesome. So last question we'll ask right now. Guys, if you have any more questions, just remember, include your Twitter name and we will answer them later. But this is the last question of this call. So in your experience, Coach, of the EYBL, your philosophy of practice, what takeaways would have informed your game model or approach to the GB under 16 camp?
So I was, like I said, first off, I was very, very fortunate to, especially at Myerscough, to work under a coach which is quite forward thinking, and just looks at things in a different way and maybe challenges the norm a little bit. So I think one of the things that I took is just how simple you can make the game. Like, we had maybe 1 or 2 set plays this year that we might have gone to out of a timeout, and the rest of it is just understanding spacing on the floor and playing out of that. So it might be, the big trails the play, he sets a drag screen. The big's ahead of the play, he dives into the post and you play out of that. And it just really stripped it back in terms of, what are our players good at? How can we maximize that? What are they not so good at? How can we, hide that when we're playing games, but work on that in practice? And that's the same thing for me. Like, I want to look at, with the GB stuff, it's not necessarily what we're doing tactically. It comes back to that first point of, what's the skill level of the kids? And regarding the skill level of the kids, like, do they know when to do what they can do? So for me, it's especially at the U16 level, when it's their first experience for a lot of those kids, basketball off the island, basketball against a higher level competition, when they're really being tested, it's then understanding, this is what an advantage looks like. Here's how we can maximize that advantage. And that could be, you run a ball screen, they've created a switch, we can exploit the switch. So the biggest thing is just kind of stripping it right back and simplifying it. Because again, in a shortened preparation window, it can't be complicated. You don't have a lot of time for it to be complicated. We don't have a lot of contact time with the kids, and again, it's just, for me, and I spoke about this the other day on a different call, it's building a relationship with the club coaches, because you guys spend, 85, 90% of the time with the kids. What does it look like? What's the landscape like at the club level? And how can I maximize that in my environment? But yeah, it's definitely keep it as simple as possible. I think the last thing I'll say on that is, from the FIBA course, as Pablo Lasso joked about it, he was saying that in its heyday, Golden State had an 85-page playbook. How do you prepare for that? Like, you can't prepare for an 85-page playbook and take away everything. So it comes down to just your ability to play basketball and keep it as simple as possible. So that's kind of where I see things now. And I think, Neil, last year, was really good in kind of bringing it right back down, saying this is what we're going to do with an academy, and we had a lot of success with it. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Simple way. I'd rather have that over a complex playbook.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Coach, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate you doing this. Guys, like I said, if anybody has any questions, just tweet them out to us and we'll be happy to answer them. Other than that, we should make this replay available on YouTube in the next couple of days. Coach Culley, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you. Everybody have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.